What's going on, guys? This is the Brigade once again, and we're back at it with another session of Killzone Shadowfall. Alright guys, we are back at it. Now, the first video that I uploaded, as far as Killzone Shadowfall is concerned, I was basically just talking about, what I thought of the game and what I planned on doing with regard to Killzone uploads. Alright, but now that I've gotten that out the way, I want to go ahead and get started with the Killzone multiplayer for Noobs series. Now, in the event that you guys may have missed the first video, let me just kind of give you a quick explanation as to what this series is all about. Number one, there are a lot of guys who will be purchasing the PS4, but who came from Xbox. Therefore, they know nothing at all about Killzone, right? In addition to those guys, there are a lot of guys who, play a lot of first-person shooters, but maybe they just never thought about playing Killzone, right? Maybe they're all into Call of Duty, maybe they're into Battlefield, maybe they're into a number of other first-person shooters, right? But see, seeing that the PS4 is new, and Killzone is one of the launch titles, I figured that I would go ahead and do a series of videos just kind of talking about a few things and giving an explanation about a few tactics and a few classes, and just basically to do my best to spread out information to improve everyone's gaming experience. Now, keep in mind, this is not going to be one of those series where I'm trying to impress you guys, right? So if you're thinking you're here for a video where I get 100 kills or 300 kills and all like that, you're not going to see that, because that is not the goal, right? That's not the purpose, nor is that the aim of these uploads. The aim is to inform everybody, right? Just to kind of give them a little food for thought, because I can kind of understand when you start a new game, specifically first-person shooters, you jump in it and you're just kind of like, dude, what in the world am I supposed to be doing? And I've had that feeling before. I remember the first, as a matter of fact, speaking of the devil, I remember the first time I played Killzone. It was Killzone 2 multiplayer, and I was lost, 100% lost, and I didn't really have a resource, to where I can reference to where someone would say, this is this, this is that class, this is that class, these are the benefits, these are what your responsibilities are, this is what you should look forward to trying to do as playing. I didn't know any of that, right? So seeing that there are a lot of people who are going to be new to the franchise, I figured, why not just create a Killzone for Noobs series, right, to where I can do my best and inform as many people as I can, so that perhaps their initial impressions will be a little easy, right? Because I know a lot of guys, and I'm kind of guilty of this. I may have played games in the past, and if my first experience was like horrible, I would probably give up and say, you know what, this game is a little too OP. So I don't want anyone to be discouraged. I want everyone to have a good experience, and hopefully through watching some of these videos, if you go ahead and get Killzone Shadowfall, you'll have a pretty good experience, or at least as good of an experience that I have. Alright, so let's go ahead and start talking about the support class. The support class is actually my favorite class. Not necessarily because it has the most OP weapons, not because, it has the best approach to multiplayer, but the main reason why I like the support class is because your team success will rely heavily on one or two good support designees. Heavily. Now, why do I say that? Number one, the primary job of a support class member is to revive fallen teammates. If you guys will notice in the lower left hand corner, there is a template of, I think that's called the D-pad, right? And in the left direction, that is the revive option. The right direction will be one of four options that you will have. One option will be to lay down spawn beacons, land turrets, airbots, or supply boxes. Right? And we're going to go through each one of those 4 in future videos. And how I'm going to do it is, I'm going to do a few videos where I'm specifically just having a long rant or speech, instructional, whatever you want to call it, talking about the pros, the cons, the benefits, and considerations for using each one of these 4 options. In other videos, I'm basically just going to be playing the game. I'll talk about things, as I go, but it won't necessarily be formal wherein I'm sitting here and just really giving kind of like a tips and tactics type thing. So this first one is basically going to be more like a tips and tactics. And then in future videos, you guys that I see, that you guys will see me doing multiplayer, I'll just go ahead and incorporate a lot of the things that we talked about in past videos into what I see going on or what I'm doing myself. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is spawn beacons. The strategic placement of spawn beacons is so important because since Killzone multiplayer relies heavily on objectives, completing them, if you don't have a guy that's putting you right near the objective, you're going to have a hard time beating those objectives. Now, I'm not saying it will be impossible. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm just saying that you're going to have to work a lot more hard than what you would have to do if you have a guy who's, pretty good at placing beacons. And number one, the first thing you need to do to be able to drop good spawn beacons is kind of familiarize yourself with the maps. Right? Because if you're not familiar with the maps, if you're not familiar with the shortcuts, you won't. And not only the maps and the shortcuts, but if you don't know the locations of the objectives, you might kind of place those spawn beacons in the wrong area. You don't want to place the spawn beacon in an area that's too open. You want it relatively hidden, but at the same time, you want it kind of close to the objective. Now, keep in mind a lot of these missions, like let's just say you'll have capture and hold. Right, that's a situation wherein you have to capture a certain area and you have to defend it until the time runs out. Right. So in the capture and hold, you're not just capturing and holding one area. More than likely, I think there's 2 and no more than 3 capture and hold areas. So this is why I was saying a little earlier that ideally you want to have at least 2. Actually, I won't even say at least. I'll say at least 1, but no more than 2 good support role designees. Because think about it. Let's just say there's 2 objectives. Well, actually, let's just say there's 2 points to one objective. Let's say that you're in the capture and hold mission, and there's 2 points that you have to defend. Well, guess what? If you have one support class designee dropping a spawn beacon on one end and you have another relatively close to the other end, you're pretty much good to go. Your team won't have to run all the way from the deployment base all the way to the objective. They're more likely to be right there, and as long as they have fast access to the objective, you're more likely to be successful because your other team is going to be scrambling. Think about it. Let's just say I have a spawn beacon right at the objective. Right, and let's just say the opposing team does not. Well, guess what? Every single time one of their players die, they have to run all the way from the player base all the way over to the objective. So the more they have to run, that's less time that they have to engage, or that's less time that they have to defend. As long as you have an area where as long as your spawn beacon is deployed in a relatively close area, that's less time that you have to travel. You're more likely to get more kills and more likely to defend or successfully win that particular objective because you have more boots on the ground. You don't have to run. And I've noticed this so many times. I've just sat there plenty of times and I paid attention. I'm like, you know what? We lost this mission not necessarily because the team was quote unquote better, but because it just seems like you couldn't fight them off. And the reason why it seemed like you couldn't fight them off was because they had a spawn beacon close around. So every single time one of their members died, they were right back at the fight. Whereas if you're on a team that does not have good spawn beacon placement, guess what? Every single time you die, you have to run all the way from the home base to the objective. So that's more time of traveling, less time of killing and getting points. So, that's yet another reason why it is very important for you to have at least, I'll say at least one, but no more than 2 designees. And that's with the standard 7v7. Now, Killzone also has Warzone customization. So if you decide to create your own Warzone, case in point, I have my own Warzone that I created, right? And ironically, it's called the Martyrs Brigades. And in that, it's not even 7v7, it's actually 12v12. And in that 12v12, I would say ideally you would want to have 3 good support designees. And their other 9, you can have whatever. As a matter of fact, if you had 3 good designees and the other 9 assault, or you had a mixture of assault and scouts, you would be good to go. Because you would have all of your team deploying at least at 1, 2, or even 3 objectives. So your opposition would have a real hard time trying to defeat you. Because, what could they really do? Not only are you reviving your team, but they're also deploying at the objective. So, out of all of the options that you have for the support class, I really think those who control the spawn beacons, that's like gold. Right? It's just like gold. You can't do anything better than that. Now, granted, the ability to place turrets and the airbots, those are good. They just kind of help as far as suppressing fire and getting some extra kills. But that spawn beacon, that can really make or break a game. Now, granted, we've won some games where you didn't have a good spawn beacon, but like I said before, it's a lot more difficult. So enough about that. I think I pretty much covered everything with regard to the support class and the spawn beacon. I basically talked about that. You kind of want to, be familiar with the maps. You want to be familiar with the shortcuts. You want to try your hardest to at least have 1 and no more than 2 support role designees. And even myself, there aren't any squads or any clans, at least in this point. I do know that GG is going to patch that. Right, because it's kind of odd to me that they would have clans and squads and Killzones 2 and 3, but they didn't have any in Killzone Shadowfall. That's kind of weird. And after checking out the forums, right, a lot of guys have kind of made mention about it. So I can imagine in the near future, they're going to go ahead and change it and allow for us to have squads and clans. And I'm actually looking forward to that because I want to go ahead and team up with some good guys. I created my own map. And as a matter of fact, once they allow that, I created my own Warzone template. And basically what I would do is, for everyone who is interested, I would just fire up a quick upload. I'll say, hey, listen, dudes, go ahead and check out this Warzone. It was customized by me. It's under my name. We can all have a series of fights together. And it would definitely be fun. So, once we get more people rolling out with the PS4s and hopefully more who make an investment into Killzone Shadowfall, we will make room for a lot of good experiences. Alright, so enough about that. Now, with regard to these weapons, I kind of have my favorite. I think I like the shotgun the most. I use it a lot. Like I said before, if you're thinking you're going to sit here and get like 50 and 60 kills with a shotgun, not really, especially when you're playing the support role, because your first job is to ensure that you are reviving your teammates. Right? So after you kind of revive your teammates and you get everything down, then you can go ahead and focus on kills. One thing that I do like about the shotgun in particular, and actually now that I'm talking about it, I think in future videos I'm just going to do weapon showcases wherein I I kind of dedicate maybe a 5-minute video to talking about weapons. You know, I talk about the strengths and weaknesses and why I like it or why I dislike it. I think that would be a good thing because as far as main weapons, I think the support class has, I think, 5 or 6. Personally, I use 3. Actually, I think it's 5. Personally, I use 3 of those weapons. The other 2, they're not too bad, but I just haven't really experimented with them that much, right? And in addition to that, you have 2 types of handguns, right, with several attachments that you can get with unlocks. All right, so we're doing pretty good, and actually, this is one of my favorite maps. You know, there's so many good maps on here. You know, they're wide open. There's so much space. There's crawling spaces. There's hidden corridors. I mean, you know, whenever you're kind of in one of those situations where you're in a stronghold, you know, where you got one team on one side, the other team on the other side, and you guys are just kind of going back and forth, there's so many ways that you can approach. I mean, you can flank. You could do all of that. This game, as far as the multiplayer, is just great. Now, I might go ahead and play a single-player campaign. I don't know. I'm not really into the single player. You know, it's kind of cool, but for the most part, I like to focus more so on the multiplayer. That's kind of like where the bread and butter is. And for the most part, the multiplayer is what keep people coming back to playing the same game. Because, you know, the same thing could be said with Killzone 2 and Killzone 3. And not only the Killzone, I just keep talking about that because that's the game that I'm playing. You know, a lot of other franchises. Dark Souls, case in point. I didn't continue to play Dark Souls for 2 years because of the single player. Now, you know, does that mean that the single player is bad? No, it doesn't mean that it's bad. All I'm saying is the multiplayer is what kept my attention. The same could be said for the most part for people who like to play Battlefield, you know, Call of Duty, you know, obviously Killzone, and a lot of other multiplayer games. You know, because after you play the campaign a couple times, it's kind of like, okay, I got all my trophies, I'm good to go. But a good, clean, exciting multiplayer will leave you with a lot of fun times and good experiences for weeks and potentially months on end. Because as a matter of fact, before Dark Souls was released, I played Killzone 3, I would say probably almost a year straight. Right? And even after I got to playing Dark Souls, I continued to play Killzone 3 off and on. Right? So that is pretty much it. I think I did enough talking about the support class, specifically with regard to the spawn beacon option. So just remember, when you guys are out there, you know, and you're playing and you notice like, man, our team has an advantage, just keep in mind that more than likely they have a good, I'll just say 1 or 2 good support designees, and they're probably taking advantage of that strategic tactical spawn beacon placement. So don't be afraid to use the support class. Go ahead and experiment with it, learn the maps, because a degree to which you're good at being a support teammate, more than likely your team will win more and more and more. Alright guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this first video, and until next time, Martyrs Brigade is out.